The first thing Daniel understood was the beeping. Steady, patient, counting something he couldn't name yet. Then the light. Too white, too flat, nothing like the sun he remembered from wherever he'd last been. He tried to place the last clear moment. A red light. A horn. Too loud. Too close. After that, nothing. Just this ceiling, and this sound, and the dull ache spreading up through his ribs like something waking up alongside him. He turned his head. Slow. Everything was slow now, and there she was. Not Claire. Renee sat folded into the chair beside the bed, elbows on her knees, hands pressed together in front of her mouth like she'd been praying or holding herself together. Maybe both. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her hair was down, which he almost never saw. Renee kept it tied back, always practical, always composed. Not tonight. She saw him look at her, and her whole face broke open. "Daniel!" She was up and beside him before he could answer, her hand finding his on top of the blanket like it belonged there. Warm. Too warm. He was aware of it in a way he shouldn't have been. "Hey," he managed. His voice came out cracked, unfamiliar. "Where's Claire?" Something flickered across Renee's face. Small. Gone, almost before it started. "Singapore," she said. "The conference. She's on a flight. The earliest one she could get. She'll be here in 2 days." 2 days. "You didn't have to come," he said, though even as he said it, he was glad she had. That thought embarrassed him before he'd even finished having it. "Try and stop me." Renee's laugh was thin, unsteady, more breath than sound. She hadn't let go of his hand. "You scared the hell out of me, you know that?" "I scared myself." "Don't joke." Her voice cracked on the second word. "I got the call, and I drove here so fast I don't even remember the roads. I kept thinking." She stopped herself. "Thinking what?" Renee shook her head, looked down at their hands, like she was only just noticing hers was still there. She didn't move it. "Nothing. Just glad you're okay." A pause, too long to be nothing. "Glad I got here." Daniel watched her face in the sterile light, and for a moment it was 7 years ago again. A kitchen that wasn't Claire's. A conversation that never got finished. A version of his life that had quietly closed its door and never reopened it. He hadn't thought about that summer in a long time. He hadn't let himself. "Renee, you should rest," she said quickly, straightening, putting an inch of distance between them that felt, somehow, louder than her closeness had. "The doctor said you need to rest. I'll be right here." He wanted to ask her what she'd meant. Glad I got here. First, before Claire, before anyone. But his eyes were already heavy, the anesthesia still pulling at the edges of him, and he let them close. He almost missed it. Almost didn't hear her lean down, feel her breath close to his ear, her voice so low it might have been meant only for herself. "You're mine now." Daniel's eyes stayed shut. His heart didn't. He told himself he'd imagined it. He told himself that twice more before sleep finally took him under, and still wasn't sure he believed it either time. Daniel drifted in and out through the morning, and every time he surfaced, Renee was still there. She'd found a change of clothes from somewhere, a gray sweater that wasn't hers, borrowed maybe, or bought at the gift shop downstairs, and she'd pulled her hair back up the way he was used to seeing it, composed again, practical again, as if the version of her from the night before had been put away somewhere and locked. But he remembered what she'd said. He hadn't imagined it. He was almost sure. "You didn't sleep," he said, when the nurse had gone, and it was just the two of them and the beeping. I slept some. In that chair? I've slept in worse places. Renee handed him a cup of water with a bendable straw, businesslike, avoiding his eyes in a way that felt deliberate. Doctor says you're lucky. Broken ribs, concussion, a lot of bruising. Could have been so much worse, Daniel. I know. Do you? Her voice had an edge he wasn't used to hearing from her. Because when they called me, I didn't know if... She stopped, pressed her lips together, started again, quieter. I didn't know what I was walking into. Why did they call you? It was the obvious question, and he watched it land on her like something she'd been waiting for and dreading in equal measure. Claire had you listed as her emergency contact for herself, but you didn't have anyone current on file. I guess I'm still down as a fallback. From before. Renee busied herself straightening a blanket that didn't need straightening. Old paperwork. We should update it. From before. 2 words doing the work of an entire summer neither of them had spoken about since it ended. Renee. He said her name carefully, testing the weight of it. Can I ask you something? You can ask. Last night, did you say something to me before I fell asleep? Her hand stilled on the blanket. For a moment she didn't answer, and the silence stretched long enough that he thought maybe she wouldn't. You were pretty out of it, she said finally. You probably dreamed it. Renee, drink your water, Daniel. He drank his water, but he watched her over the rim of the cup, and she wouldn't quite meet his eyes. And something in her jaw was working like she was holding a door shut with her whole body. How's Claire taking it? He asked instead, changing course, giving her the out. Renee's shoulders eased, just slightly. Relieved, terrified. You know how she gets. She wanted to charter a private jet. I had to talk her down. She loves you a lot, Daniel. I know she does. Good. Renee finally looked at him, and there was something almost fierce in it, like she was reminding herself as much as telling him. You two are good together. You're good for her. Renee, why does that sound like you're trying to convince yourself? Her mouth opened, closed, and for one unguarded second, something old and unhealed moved across her face. The same thing he'd seen the night before, right before she'd caught it and put it away. I should call the nurse, she said instead, standing abruptly. Check on your pain levels. See if you're due for... Renee. She stopped at the door, back to him, hand on the frame. That summer, Daniel said quietly. We never actually talked about why it ended. Her shoulders rose and fell with one slow breath. No, she agreed, not turning around. We didn't. And then she was gone, off to find a nurse who wasn't due for another hour, leaving Daniel alone with the beeping and the ache in his ribs, and the growing certainty that whatever she wasn't saying was going to matter a great deal more than either of them wanted it to. Visiting hours ended at 9, but Renee didn't leave. She told the night nurse she was family, which wasn't a lie, not really, not by the paperwork, and settled back into the chair beside his bed with a paper cup of vending machine coffee she didn't drink. The hospital had gone quiet around them, that particular hush that settles over a building full of people trying to heal. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor chimed, and someone answered it. Otherwise, just the two of them, and the low hum of the room. You should go home, Daniel said. Sleep in an actual bed. I'm fine here. Renee. I said I'm fine, Daniel. But she softened it with something almost like a smile and pulled her chair an inch closer to help him with the water again. And he noticed, he couldn't not notice, how careful she was with him. How her hand found his wrist first, checking, before she did anything else, like some old instinct that had never fully switched off. "Can I tell you something?" he said, "and you won't get weird about it?" "That depends entirely on the something. I thought about you. After. For a long time." Renee went very still. "Daniel, I'm not saying it to start something. You asked why it ended, and I never really answered, because I don't think either of us knew. It just did, and I let it, because it seemed easier than figuring out what I actually felt." She was quiet for a long moment, looking at their hands, hers still resting near his wrist, close enough that neither of them had moved it away. "I know why it ended," she said finally, so quiet he almost missed it. "Tell me." "Because I was scared, and you let me be scared, and neither of us fought for it." Her voice wavered on the last word. "And then Claire came along, and she was so sure of you in a way I never let myself be, and it was easier to watch you be happy with her than to ever say anything." "Renee, I'm still doing it," she said, almost to herself. "Watching you be happy with her, sitting here at 2 a.m. doing it again." The room felt smaller than it had a moment ago. Daniel could hear his own pulse in the monitor's rhythm, steady, too fast. "Why did you really come, Renee? Before Claire? Before anyone else? Why were you the one who got here first?" She looked up at him then, and there was no composure left in her face at all. Just 7 years of something neither of them had ever let finish. "Because some part of me has never stopped being the first person who'd run to you," she said. "And I hate that. I hate it, because I love my sister, and I love what you two have, and I've spent years being good about this. But you weren't answering, Daniel. They said you weren't answering, and for about 10 minutes on the drive here, I didn't know if you were alive, and every single thing I thought I'd made peace with just—" Her hand had drifted up, without either of them deciding it, to rest against the side of his face, careful of the bruising, careful of him, the way she'd been careful all night. Her thumb moved once, barely, along his cheekbone. "Renee." His voice had gone rough. "You should stop." "I know." She didn't stop. Her eyes searched his, a question neither of them was saying out loud, and he didn't pull away, and that not pulling away was its own kind of answer. The space between them had closed without either of them tracking when. Her breath caught, soft and unsteady, and his heart was doing something wild and stupid against his cracked ribs. "Renee, if you do this—" "I know," she said again, barely a whisper now. "I know, Daniel. I know exactly what I'm doing." And then there was no more space at all. It was brief, a breath of a kiss, soft and careful of the bandage near his mouth, more grief than desire, more 7 years than one moment, and it undid something in both of them that had been holding steady for a very long time. Renee pulled back first, her hand still against his face, her forehead nearly touching his. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Oh, God. Daniel, I'm sorry." She stood so fast the chair scraped against the floor, one hand pressed over her mouth, eyes wide with something between wonder and horror. "Renee, wait! I have to go." She was already backing toward the door, grabbing her coat off the chair, not looking at him now, unable to. I need air. I'll be back. I just need—" "Renee." But she was already gone, the door swinging shut behind her, and Daniel lay alone in the dim room, with his pulse hammering against the monitor's patient, indifferent beep, and the taste of a mistake he couldn't undo now sitting heavy on his mouth, and one single, terrible thought circling louder than all the others. Claire lands in 36 hours. Renee didn't come back for an hour. Daniel lay staring at the ceiling, replaying it, the careful weight of her hand, the way she'd said, "I know exactly what I'm doing," like it was a confession and an apology in the same breath. He thought about Claire, somewhere over an ocean right now, asleep in an airplane seat, trusting completely that she was flying home to the same life she'd left. When the door finally opened again, it was so quiet, he almost didn't hear it. Renee stood in the doorway, coat still on, eyes swollen. She didn't come in right away. "I shouldn't have done that," she said. "Renee, no, let me. I need to say this before I lose my nerve." She stepped in, but kept the width of the room between them, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. "I've spent 7 years being the sister who handled it, who came to Thanksgiving and watched you two hold hands across the table and smiled, and meant it, mostly, and told myself that whatever I felt was old news that didn't get a vote anymore. And then I sat in that chair tonight, and it turned out none of that was as settled as I thought." "It wasn't just you," Daniel said quietly. "I didn't stop you. That's worse somehow." A broken laugh. "I keep waiting to feel like the villain in this, and mostly I just feel tired, Daniel. Tired of pretending I'm the version of myself I show everyone at holidays." He shifted against the pillows, wincing at his ribs, wanting badly to sit up straighter for this conversation, and unable to. "What happens now?" he asked. "That's the question, isn't it?" Renee finally met his eyes. "Claire lands tomorrow night. She is going to walk into this room and look at both of us, and she trusts us completely, and I don't know how to stand in front of her and be the person she thinks I am." "You want to tell her?" "I don't want to do anything." Her voice cracked. "But I don't think I can look my sister in the eye and let her believe nothing happened. That's not fair to her. And it's not—" She stopped, swallowed. "It's not fair to whatever this is either, pretending it's nothing, so it can just quietly disappear." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the hospital corridor hummed with its late-night rhythms, someone's cartwheels, a distant page over the intercom. Inside the room, the only sound was his own heartbeat, loud in his ears. "I love Claire," he said finally. Not as an accusation, just true, the way it had always been true, the way it still was even now. "Whatever just happened between us, it doesn't erase that. It scares me, actually, how much I still know that's true." Something in Renee's face folded, relief and grief tangled together. "I know," she said. "I never thought it did. I think that's exactly why I'm standing here feeling like I've ruined something instead of found something." "So what do we do?" Renee wiped at her eyes, straightened her spine the way he'd watched her do 100 times before, the composure returning, piece by piece, back into its familiar shape. "I think," she said slowly, "you and I owe her the truth, not to punish ourselves, because she deserves to build whatever comes next on something real, and so do you. And so, God help me, do I. That's going to break her heart." "I know." Renee's voice was barely above a whisper now. "But a lie would break it worse eventually. It always does." Daniel looked at her, really looked, past the 7 years and the kiss and the guilt sitting like a stone in his chest, and understood, with a clarity the concussion hadn't managed to blur, exactly what tomorrow night was going to cost all 3 of them. "Okay," he said quietly. "We tell her together." Renee nodded, once, like something had been decided that neither of them could take back now. Neither of them noticed, in that moment, that Claire's flight had landed 6 hours early. Claire found the rental car return line moving faster than expected, caught an earlier connection out of pure luck, and spent the drive from the airport composing herself, telling herself Daniel would be fine, that Renee would have called if it were serious, that she just needed to see his face to believe it. She didn't call ahead. She wanted to surprise him. The door to his room was open a crack when she reached it, and she heard voices before she saw anything. Renee's voice, low and unsteady, saying something about telling her together, and Daniel's voice answering, quiet, grave, saying that's going to break her heart. Claire stood in the hallway with her hand on the doorframe and did not go in. She heard enough. Not everything, not the whole shape of it, not the specific truth of what had happened in that room the night before, but enough to understand that something had shifted between her fiancé and her sister that had nothing to do with a car accident. When she finally stepped inside, her face was very still. In the particular way it went still only when she was holding something together by force. Claire. Daniel's relief died the instant he saw her expression. You're early. I am. Her eyes moved from him to Renee and back, and something passed across her face, not yet understanding, but the first cold edge of it. What were you two about to tell me together? The silence that followed was its own answer. Renee was the one who finally broke it, because she'd promised herself she would, because a lie would cost more than the truth even now, standing in the wreckage of the moment she'd hoped to choose the timing of herself. Claire, sit down, she said, voice trembling. Please, there's something you need to know, and I need you to hear it from me. What followed was not easy, and it was not quick, and Daniel would remember it for the rest of his life as the conversation where he watched his fiancée's trust in two of the people she loved most come apart in real time. The shock, the disbelief, the anger that arrived late and hit hardest. The question. How Long asked 3 different ways before she believed the answer was one night, one moment, nothing before it. Claire didn't scream. That was almost worse. She sat very straight in the chair Renee had occupied for 2 days, hands folded in her lap, and asked her questions in a voice gone flat with the effort of not shattering. And when she finally stood to leave, she looked at Daniel with an expression he'd never seen on her before. Not quite hatred, something sadder and more permanent than that. I need time, she said. I don't know what that means yet, but I can't be in this room right now. She left. Renee, after a long, wordless look at Daniel, grief and guilt, and something that might have been the last honest goodbye of whatever they'd almost let themselves become, went after her sister, because whatever came next, Claire should not have to face it alone, and Renee owed her that much and more. Daniel lay alone in the hospital bed, ribs aching, the monitor keeping its patient rhythm beside him, and understood with total clarity, too late to matter, but clear all the same, exactly what he'd risked, and exactly what he wanted to fight to keep, if Claire would ever let him try. He didn't know yet if she would. He only knew that whatever he'd felt for Renee in that dark room 2 nights ago had been real and true, and utterly beside the point, because the life he wanted was the one he'd almost thrown away to find that out.